Nicholas's mind scrambled for logic. How was this even possible? Could she have? No. He would have known. She would have told him. At least, that's what he had always believed. But then again, when she left, she hadn't said a single word. He remembered it vividly, the way Emma had walked away years ago. No explanation, no long argument, not even a parting sentence. Just silence. He had told himself she was angry, maybe hurt, maybe just wanted space. He convinced himself she would return once the storm in her heart passed. He had shrugged it off with his usual arrogance, whispering in his own mind that she'd overreacted, but she never came back. And Nicholas had let her go, never once questioning why she had vanished so completely, never once asking what pain she carried when she walked away from him. Now, standing in the middle of a grand ballroom, marble floors glistening under the chandelier, Nicholas looked at the two boys beside her, and everything inside him shattered. He suddenly knew. He didn't need words. Their presence, their faces, told him everything. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to approach, to claim them. Yet his feet felt rooted to the ground as Emma, poised and calm, walked further into the room. Heads turned, conversations hushed. The gala's music faded beneath the sound of whispers. She didn't look uncertain. She didn't look nervous. No, if anything, Emma looked like she belonged here more than he ever had. Guests began to murmur, eyes darting between Nicholas and the woman with two boys at her side. The resemblance was undeniable. One of the boys, Lucas, though Nicholas didn't yet know his name, looked up curiously. Their eyes met, and Nicholas's heart stopped. Lucas tilted his head, studying him with innocent curiosity. Then came the words that shattered what little self-control Nicholas had managed to hold. "Mommy, is that the man from your picture box?" Emma froze. Her lips parted slightly as if the weight of the moment had caught up to her. She looked at her son. Then, slowly, her eyes lifted to Nicholas. And then she walked toward him. Not dramatically, not in anger, quietly, dignified. Every step carried a weight heavier than a shouted accusation. Her son's little hands clung to hers, grounding her in that moment. Nicholas's heart thundered in his chest. It was louder than any boardroom confrontation, more terrifying than any scandal he'd ever endured. She stopped only a few feet away. Her gaze was steady, her voice calm. "These," she said simply, "are your sons." The word struck him like lightning. Sons. Nicholas's lips parted, but his throat felt dry. He stared at the boys, then back at her. His mind screamed with 1,000 questions, but only one word made it past his lips. Sons. Emma gave the smallest of nods. Nicholas looked closer. The shape of their noses? The arch of their brows? Even the way they stood, it was undeniable. For a man who had built his empire on control and certainty, this truth crumbled the very walls of his existence. Something inside him collapsed, not just shock, but regret. Crushing, suffocating regret. "I didn't know." The words slipped out, barely a whisper. "You never told me." Emma raised an eyebrow, not an accusation, but an acknowledgement of the bitter irony. "I didn't think you'd care." The sentence cut deeper than any failure, any scandal, any downfall Nicholas had ever faced. A blade straight to the soul. He wanted to protest, to shout that he would have cared, that he could have been different, that he had been blind. But he knew, deep inside, she wouldn't believe it. Maybe she shouldn't. The room felt smaller. The whispers of the crowd pressed against his chest. And for the first time in his life, Nicholas, old, calculated Nicholas, stood powerless. For the rest of the evening, Nicholas couldn't shake the image from his mind. The gala ended, but the echoes remained. The music faded. The laughter died down. The chandeliers dimmed, but the sight of Emma and the two boys lingered like a shadow he could not escape. Long after the last guest had left, he remained in the ballroom. Alone, silent. He replayed every moment: her entrance, her steady gaze, the innocence in the boy's eyes, the devastating calm in her voice when she'd said, "These are your sons." It was like every wall he had built over the years came crumbling down. Back in his penthouse that night, Nicholas paced restlessly from room to room. His luxury apartment, once a symbol of pride and power, now mocked him with its emptiness. There were no toys scattered across the floor, no childish laughter echoing through the hallways, no drawings taped to the refrigerator, just silence, deafening, suffocating silence. He sat on the edge of his bed, still in his suit, staring at the city lights. And in that silence, memories resurfaced, painful, merciless memories. Emma standing in his office doorway 4 years ago, the bag of food in her hand, the curve of her pregnant belly, the way she had looked at him in silence, broken but dignified, before turning away. and him arrogant, dismissive, assuming she would return, because in his world, people always came back. But she hadn't. She had walked away. He had never gone after her. For the first time, he realized just how much that single choice had cost him. Nicholas didn't sleep a minute that night. The next morning, exhaustion written across his face. He did something he had never imagined himself capable of. He reached out. Through a mutual acquaintance at the gala, he learned Emma was living in Maine. A quiet coastal town, far from Manhattan's glittering towers. It wasn't much to go on, but it was enough. This time, he didn't send lawyers. He didn't send assistants or investigators. He didn't demand meetings through official channels. He picked up a pen and wrote a letter, handwritten, raw, without his usual signature block or the seal of Grayson Enterprises. For the first time in years, Nicholas Grayson bled truth onto paper. He told her he understood if she never wanted to see him again, that he wouldn't blame her, that he would carry the weight of his failures alone. But he also wrote that he would give anything for the chance to meet his sons. Not to claim them, not to demand rights, but simply to know them. He didn't speak of forgiveness. He didn't beg for redemption. He asked only for the opportunity to show up not as the man who had betrayed her, but as someone who could try to be better now. When the letter was finished, he read it once, then again, before folding it carefully. It was imperfect, but it was real, and for Nicholas, that was new. Days passed, then a week, then two. No response. Nicholas tortured himself with doubt. Maybe she had torn it up. Maybe she had read it with a bitter smile before throwing it away. Maybe she hadn't even opened it. Then, one cold evening, as he sat alone in his office staring at numbers that suddenly meant nothing, his phone buzzed on email. From Emma. No greeting, no emotion, just a single line. Thursday, sure EAM calf, by the water. 10 minutes, that's all. Nicholas's chest tightened. Relief, fear, hope, it all collided in him at once. She had agreed to meet. The cafe was small, tucked beside the harbor where fishing boats swayed gently against the tide. It was the kind of place Nicholas would never have stepped into before a humble wooden sign. Chipped blue paint, the smell of salt water in the air. But that morning, it felt like the most important place in the world. He arrived early, too early, dressed not in his usual suit, but in a simple sweater and jeans, his hands restless in his pockets. The city's power broker, reduced to a man waiting nervously by the window of a seaside cafe, every second felt like a test. The scrape of chairs, the clinking of cups, the chatter of locals, none of it reached him. He kept glancing at the door, his pulse quickening with each shadow that passed by. And then, she came. Emma. She looked different, yet exactly the same. Her hair tied back in a loose braid, her coat wrapped around her like armor, her face calm but unreadable. She walked with quiet confidence, her every step measured. But what stole Nicholas's breath wasn't hurt, was the two small figures holding her hands, the twins. Lucas and Oliver. Their cheeks flushed pink from the breeze, their jackets mismatched but loved, their eyes wide with the endless curiosity of children. They weren't just faces in a dream anymore. They were real, alive, his sons. For a heartbeat, Nicholas forgot how to breathe. Emma approached, her voice steady, deliberate. Lucas, Oliver, this is Nicholas, someone I used to know. He wanted to meet you. The boys looked at him, cautious but unafraid. Lucas tilted his head, studying him with the boldness only children possess. Then, without hesitation, he asked, "Do you like dinosaurs?" Nicholas blinked. Of all the questions he expected, that wasn't one. But then, a small smile tugged at his lips. "I love them, especially the Stegosaurus." Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's the best one. He has spikes on his back." Oliver, quieter but no less curious, stepped closer. "I like the He's the boss." Nicholas crouched down to their level, his voice softer than it had ever been. "Then I guess I'm meeting two real experts today." It was the smallest exchange, but it broke the wall. Within minutes, the boys were pulling him toward the playground across the street, showing him the wooden ship, appointing him as captain, laughing when he followed their wild instructions. Emma stood nearby, arms folded, her eyes never leaving them. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in quiet defense. She wasn't protecting herself anymore. She was protecting them. And yet, she didn't step in. She let it happen. Nicholas didn't claim them, didn't rush, didn't act entitled to closeness. He simply followed their lead, listening, answering, laughing when they demanded it. For the first time in his life, Nicholas Grayson wasn't a CEO. Wasn't a man of power. Wasn't in control. He was just present, and that was enough. The weeks that followed turned into something Nicholas had never imagined. Always public, always with Emma nearby, always cautious. Trips to the zoo, puppet shows at the library. Afternoons on the beach, where seashells became treasure and sandcastles rose like kingdoms. The boys didn't need gifts. They didn't need grand gestures. They needed him to remember which snack Lucas liked best, to ask Oliver how school went, to show up when he said he would. And he did. Every time. One afternoon, Lucas tripped and scraped his knee. The boy's tears came fast, sharp, and Nicholas, without thinking, scooped him up, whispered silly words, sang a ridiculous little song until the sobs gave way to giggles. Emma turned away then, swallowing something she couldn't name. Her guard was still up. 1 month of consistency couldn't erase years of silence, but she couldn't deny what she saw. He was changing, not polished, not perfect, but real. And slowly, painfully, Nicholas realized this wasn't about redemption. It was about presence. One quiet moment at a time. Late October, as the sun set in golden streaks across the park, Emma finally spoke. "They don't need perfect," she said softly, watching the boys draw shapes in the dirt with sticks. "They need present." Nicholas swallowed hard. Her words lodged deep in his chest, more binding than any contract he had ever signed. "I want to be that," he whispered. "Not for me, for them, and for you, if you'll let me." Emma didn't answer, not with words, but her silence wasn't cold anymore. And when she finally said, "Next time, you can come to the house," Nicholas felt something in him shatter: relief, gratitude, hope. He had been given not a second chance, but a beginning. That evening, stepping into Emma's small cottage for the first time, Nicholas felt like a man stepping into a world he was never meant to touch, yet desperately longed for. It wasn't glamorous. Faded wallpaper, floors that creaked, crayon drawings taped to the fridge. But it was alive. It was a home. The boys ran ahead, jackets flying off, diving into a half-collapsed blanket fort. Nicholas hesitated in the doorway, awkward, unsure, until Emma brushed past him with the faintest touch of her hand against his arm, a silent permission. And just like that, he wasn't a guest, he was part of the scene, building Lego towers, playing monster, reading bedtime stories with voices that grew more animated as the boys demanded them. Emma stood in the doorway, once tray in her hands, watching, and for the first time in years, her face softened, not into trust, not yet, but into something dangerously close to peace. Then came the storm. Winds howled. Rain slashed against windows, the power cut out. Candles flickered across the cottage. Emma sat with the boys under blankets, flashlight in hand, when a knock rattled the door. Nicholas, soaked, breathless, holding a bag of batteries and a container of hot soup. "You shouldn't have come in this weather," Emma said. "I didn't want you in the dark alone," he replied. That night, after the twins fell asleep near the fireplace, Nicholas and Emma sat shoulder to shoulder, watching the flames. No declarations, no promises, just the quiet weight of presence. And for the first time, Nicholas didn't feel like a man trying to reclaim what he had lost. He felt like a father. Months later, on a bright spring morning, balloons tied to the porch, cakes shaped like rockets and dinosaurs, Lucas and Oliver turned 5. The backyard filled with laughter. Friends, neighbors, children darting around in superhero capes. Nicholas wore a paper crown at their command, crawled through cardboard tunnels, let himself be zapped by invisible lasers. And when the boys blew out their candles, Emma whispered, her voice breaking, "We made it." Later, after the guests had gone, the 4 of them lay on a blanket under the stars, the boys drifting into sleep, capes still tied, their small bodies curled against each parent. Nicholas reached for Emma's hand. She didn't pull away. And in that single gesture, fingers intertwined under the starlight, everything shifted. Not forgiveness, not a fairy tale ending, but a beginning.